All right, hi everyone, and welcome to Ceramic Workshop. This is a very early morning for me, but I'm so excited to be talking to you about ceramic network and give this workshop that should cover the fundamentals that you should understand in order to build good applications on ceramic network. So this workshop will be about 30 minutes and we will cover a few theoretical things about ceramic and ComposeDB on ceramic. And I will also give you a very quick live demo showing a very simple application that you can use to test things out or to even use it as a basis of your own project. So let's dive in. So my name is Justina. I work as a developer success lead at Ceramic. If you have any questions, any feedback, or any help with your projects, you can always approach me and send all of your feedback and questions to me. You can find me on Twitter. This is my handle. And below you can also see my email, which is justina@3box.io. And I will definitely help you out, so don't hesitate to contact me. Very quickly about our bounties. We have two bounties for this hackathon, and the first one is for building best DAO collaboration tools built using ComposeDB on Ceramic. And the winner of this bounty will be rewarded with $1,500. And what we want to see being built here are tools and applications that would make it easier for DAO members to collaborate, and you can build anything from better ways to facilitate discussions for DAO members to make it easier to manage and run governance proposals, and also make it easier for DAOs to track and reward user contributions and for the users to enable them to build out their contribution profiles. So there are lots of different things that you can build here, but basically what we want to achieve here is to allow you to build some really cool applications and tools that would really unlock the scale and the growth of DAOs through better infrastructure and better tooling. And then we have another bounty, which is a content bounty. So we would like you to create a technical guide for encrypting ComposeDB data using LIT protocol. And the reward for this bounty is $500. So we do see a lot of developers using Ceramic and LIT, and LIT is a very popular option when it comes to data encryption. So we would really like to see some really good content writers working on the guide that would showcase very easily and in a very detailed way on how developers can encrypt data using LIT and then store it on Ceramic Network by using ComposeDB on Ceramic. So we are really excited to see what you can build. And once again, if you have any questions or need any help, always feel free to reach out to us and we will definitely help you out. All right, so let's talk about ComposeDB on Ceramic. So ComposeDB on Ceramic is a graph database built for Web3 app developers. We built ComposeDB on Ceramic and released it just a few months ago. The main idea behind building ComposeDB on Ceramic was to provide developers with better infrastructure to make it easier for them to store application data and then interact with that data. For example, to perform different queries for reading the data, to perform mutations, to update the data, and so on. Yeah, we are really excited to see what developers can build, and there are so many interesting aspects about ComposeDB that we believe should make it easier for developers to build applications that provide better user experience and more Web2-like user experience. So more specifically, I'm speaking about data composability and interoperability. So I would like to dive into these aspects a little bit more now. When I talk about all of that, I really like to give this very simple and quick example to really showcase the value of ComposeDB. So in this example, I would like to compare how things usually work in traditional world when it comes to building applications and when it comes to the users interacting with those applications, and then comparing to how things are with ComposeDB on Ceramic. So let's imagine that we are in a traditional kind of Web2-like world right now, and we have a user who would like to use some social apps. So they come across a social app A, and usually this process looks like this. Users have to sign up, they have to provide some details about themselves, like their name, their birthday, location, and so on. They set their site preferences, for example, what kind of notifications they want to get, color schemes, and so on. And they start building their social graph. So what kind of people they follow, they start forming secondary connections, and so on. Then let's say the user comes across another really cool social app, B, and the process of starting to use this application is exactly the same. They have to sign up, provide almost exactly the same details about themselves. They have to set site preferences, and they have to start building their social graph completely from scratch. So users basically have to do the same thing over and over again for every new social application they want to use. There is no way to just sign up and have their data, for example, their social graph, to be available there. They have to start from zero every single time. And the worst part about this is that user-generated data, for example, all of these details like their name, preferences, and social graph, is segmented and stored on data servers that are completely siloed and that belong to centralized companies that we all know can do some really questionable things with the user data. And this debate and conversation about user data security is obviously very important. And from developer experience as well, this means that when developers build these applications like social app A or social app B, they have to work on these applications completely siloed as well. They have to build features for these applications from scratch completely, and think about the data schema from scratch, and there is no collaborative work involved here. So all of these things we try to address and solve with ComposeDB. So at the very center of ComposeDB, we have a component called data model. This data model consists of two main blocks. So one is regular data model metadata, which consists of data model name, description, and schema URL. And then we have the actual schema, which can be defined in GraphQL schema definition language, and you can define what kind of fields should be included in a specific data model, and what kind of specific requirements specific fields should have, for example, data types, and so on. This is how you define a data model. Data model can be defined for any feature in your application. So for example, if you're building that Web3 social app, you might have features like creating user profile, creating a post, following someone. So for each of these features, you will have a data model defined, and you will have that schema defined. The best thing about all of this is that data models can be shared on Ceramic Network with other developers. So this means that if you, let's say you are building an application and you built a really cool and quite good data model that is very universal and that fits any other application out there. So you can share it on Ceramic Network, and then other developers, when they start working on their application, they can take that existing data model, plug it into their application, and then focus on building out other features. And this basically creates this more collaborative effort to build applications, and this is how we really enable developers to build applications using composable data, because you can take what exists out there already and you can build on top of it. Another really important aspect of all of this, and one of the key things that ComposeDB is supposed to provide, is an ability to create applications using interoperable data. So this means that if two applications, let's say DApp1 and DApp2, use the same data models, for example, the same user profile model, the data between these two applications will be synced automatically. And this means that developers, as they build these applications, they will have some data from the get-go, and they can start thinking about the user experience immediately, and really think about how they can build out this application the best, and they can have some data to experiment with already. And most importantly for the user, it means that now they can bring their data with them. So for example, if the user signed up for dApp number 1 and created their profile here, just because these two dApps use the same user profile model, once the user signs up for dApp number 2 using their MetaMask, for example, their profile will be there already, and it will be the same information on both of these apps. So this opens up so many opportunities for developers to build interoperable data applications, and to enable the users to have more ownership of their own data, because now they can bring their data with them wherever they go and whatever new apps they sign up for. And this notion of user ownership of their data is something that we talk a lot about at Ceramic, and this is the basis that Ceramic Network is built on, because all of the data streams that users generate as they interact with the applications built on Ceramic Network are tied to users' decentralized identifier, which means that only the user can then create new data streams or perform some updates and mutations to existing data streams. And we believe that there are so many different details and aspects to that user sovereign data, but we do believe that details like user profile, social verifications, user-generated content, site preferences, credentials, cookies, metadata, NFT content, and so many things above that, they should belong to the user, and we want to make sure that users can have as much ownership of that data as possible, and we try to achieve that by making sure that users can manage their data by using their decentralized identifiers. So when we talk about applications that are built on Ceramic Network, this is how a very simplified structure looks like. So at the very bottom, we have Ceramic node, which is an underlying infrastructure. Ceramic nodes are very important to make sure that we have this decentralized network that is used for developers then build applications on top of. So all developers that are building applications on Ceramic, they have to run their own node. And this is very important because then their nodes can connect to what we call Ceramic Anchor Service, which basically creates anchors or commits on a blockchain. And this is, for example, Ethereum blockchain. And this is how the data that is written on a Ceramic network becomes officially timestamped on a blockchain. So this is very important. And also, running your own Ceramic node when building an application is important to make sure that you can really take advantage of that data interoperability aspect, so that it would be possible to sync the data between a few nodes, for example, if they reuse the same data models. On top of that, we have ComposeDB, which is a Ceramic interface. With ComposeDB, developers can create data models. They can interact with the data by running queries, and ComposeDB also provides indexing, which makes it much easier to read the data and to perform mutations and so on. And then we have data composites at the very top, and data composites are model instance documents. You can think of a composite as basically a container where you put all of your data models in as you build out your application. This makes it much easier to build your app. You can always add new data models to it or remove data models if you want to do that. And it makes it much easier to build your application, deploy it, and make changes to it. There are quite a few networks that you can choose when it comes to building applications on Ceramic. In fact, we have 4 networks that you can consider. So mainnet is a network that we recommend developers to use when they are ready to run their applications in production. This means that that Ceramic Anchor Service that I mentioned previously that creates commits on a blockchain will write those commits on an Ethereum blockchain. So yeah, once again, if you're ready for your application to move to the mainnet, you can run your app on the mainnet. Anyone can do that by now. It's a very simple process to get set up. But if you are building a new project, you have a clear idea of what you want to build, especially for things like hackathons, we recommend you start with Clay testnet. You can also use Dev Unstable, which is more used for testing, even by Ceramic core team. But both of these networks, Clay testnet and Dev Unstable, will be connecting to one of the testnets that we have. So for example, this Ceramic Anchor service will not be writing the commits on Ethereum blockchain, but they will be writing commits on Gnosis, for example, for Clay testnet. One thing to remember about these two networks is that from time to time we have to wipe out the data that are stored on Clay testnet and Dev Unstable. This is mostly for housekeeping reasons, or if at some point we roll out some breaking changes. It doesn't happen often, just once or twice a year max, but just something to keep in mind. And yeah, but it's a really great option for projects that are in active development but not yet ready to run in prod. And then last but not least, we have in-memory network, which is a really great network to test things out, to get a feeling of how using ComposeDB on Ceramic is like, and especially if you are just experimenting with different ideas and you don't really have a clear project in mind just yet. In-memory is a great option for you to get started because it's a very lightweight setup and very lightweight way of running applications in general, because it doesn't use Ceramic Anchor service at all. You will only have your local indexing database available for you to run queries on the data that you generate as you build your application, but that's about it. And none of the comments will be created on a blockchain, so something to keep in mind. But yeah, once again, for hackathons and new projects, we suggest developers to start with Clay testnet. I mentioned that if you run on Ceramic Network, you should run your own node. In the past, this has been one of the trickiest parts for developers to do because it required quite a lot of knowledge on how to do things like networking and so on. And it was quite a fiddly process. So we wanted to make this much easier, and we launched 2 new developer tools fairly recently. And one of them is called Wheel, which is a new CLI tool that makes it much easier to run Ceramic nodes locally. So for example, on your machine or some kind of local server. And you can run any nodes running on any of these networks that I mentioned previously, but we don't recommend running production nodes on your own laptop unless you really want to. But for example, running and building projects on Clay testnet or in-memory, this is a really great way to get started, run your local node and start building like that. But if you prefer running your nodes on the cloud server, we have simple deployments, which is a collection of new infrascripts that make it much easier and faster to run Ceramic nodes on the cloud. Right now, we have a lot of guides on our documentation covering the steps for running Ceramic nodes on DigitalOcean Kubernetes. And we are working on adding new guides for other cloud providers out there, but basically the steps are very similar or exactly the same. So if you prefer using any other cloud provider for running your node, you can probably be quite successful with running that as well. And what kind of apps you can build using ComposeDB on Ceramic? Well, there is no one specific use case that we build ComposeDB on Ceramic for. We do see developers building really interesting applications in decentralized identity space. Social networks like Web3 social is a very big topic. DAO tooling is an area that we are very interested in quite specifically, and this is why we have the bounty for this hackathon around DAO tooling as well. So any kind of way to make it easier for users to manage proposals, tasks, create contribution graphs is something that we really want developers to build. Then we have information graphs and knowledge graphs, science graphs. So all of the applications in DeSci space, also something that is very interesting for us to see growing. And also there are so many other use cases and applications, and we are really open to unique ideas and unique applications of ComposeDB and Ceramic. So we are really excited to see what developers can build, and we really want to encourage you to take unique and creative approach to building applications using Ceramic Network. All right, so at this point, I would like to show you a very quick demo. It's gonna be super quick. I just wanted to show you how an actual application built on ComposeDB on Ceramic looks like and what kind of things you can do with this example application. I will make sure that the slides that I have here are shared with you so that you can replicate these steps. There is a little bit of prep when it comes to using this example application. I have all of this setup already done on my machine, but if you want to follow along, you will have to have the following installed and set up on your machine. So you will need a code editor, any code editor works, browser of your choice. Then you will need Node.js version 16 or later or newer installed on your machine as well. And then we will only need a jQuery installed on our machine and Git. So those are very simple things. So what I will do is I will use the wheel to quickly set up my working environment, show you how that looks like, and then we will have our example application set up for us. So I will switch to the development mode right now, so I will leave this. Okay, so the first thing that I will do is I will download the wheel. Once again, these slides will be shared with you, so you should have access to these commands as well. So I will copy the download the wheel command and go to my terminal. Maybe I'll minimize this. So I have a very simple folder right now. It's empty. It's called Dataverse Hack. You can be in any environment that you would like to work in. And I will simply run this command, which will download the wheel. So now I can start the wheel prompt that will help me to configure my working environment by typing, no need to do that. So just type in the wheel, and this starts a very simple interacting configuration that you can follow to configure your project. So first we have to choose the project type. And as you can see, they correspond to what kind of network you would like to run your application on. Again, you have to make your judgment based on what kind of stage your project is in. So you can choose from in-memory, dev, unstable, clay, mainnet. For this demo, I will use in-memory because it's the easiest and the most lightweight setup. But if you want to use different network, for example, clay testnet, you can just simply use your arrows and go up and down and choose the network you would like to use. So I will stick to in-memory here. Then we have to create the project name or choose the default. I will stick to default, create Ceramic app. We confirm the project path. Looks good to me. Then we can choose what kind of dependencies we want to install. So first one is Ceramic. This will be used to run Ceramic nodes and things like that. So obviously I do want this to be installed. Then do I want ComposeDB to be installed in my working environment? So of course, because I will be using that. And here it's very important. We also have an option to include sample application built on ComposeDB. Once again, this is exactly what I want to show you today, so I will definitely install that. And now we can do the admin did configuration. Admin did will allow you to configure your node, to make changes to it, and so on. So that's why you need to create admin did so that you have access to your node and you can perform all of these things. So we will generate did and private key fresh. You can also input from file if you have that. And we can store our did and private key into a specific file. So I will just stick to defaults here, and we can store all of these configurations that we already chose in a specific file locally. I will stick to defaults once again. And finally, we can configure ceramic. So this is where we can actually dive deeper and configure our ceramic node. But for a very simple and straightforward setup, I will just stick to defaults. So now it will install the dependencies, and in the meantime I will quickly tell you about this example application that I mentioned quite a few times already. So it's a very simple implementation of Web3 social application. You can think of it as Web3 Twitter. And it allows you to perform a few things, like you can choose the authentication method. I will show you how that looks like in just a few seconds. And then you can create your profile, you can create a post, then you can see currently created posts by other developers, if other users, if they are using your application as well, and you can follow other users and so on. As I said, this application is really intended to give you a very quick example and something that you can use to test things out and see how applications built on Composing beyond ceramic looks like, how specific features can be implemented, but you are also really encouraged to use this application as a basis of your own project. So you can work on either adding some new additional features to it, or reusing this application in any other way that really fits your use case. And we would really like to see what kind of things you can build with this application and what kind of enhancements you can do. So I think this process of installing dependencies should finish very soon. And once that's done, I will quickly show you how the actual application looks like and what kind of things you can find there. Okay, so this is done, and the very last question that we get is, would you like ceramic started as a daemon, which means that we will have our node spinned up and we can start actually using it. So of course I do want that. So once again, if you remember, I chose network in memory, and this will be a very simple in-memory node that will not connect to ceramic anchor service. And the data that will be generated as I interact with the application will not be anchored on a blockchain, but this is great because we only want to test things out and quickly interact with this example application, so we don't really need to set all of that up. It's not difficult to set up things for playtestnet, for example, but the most lightweight option is in memory. So now things are starting off, and we should have things configured very soon. So now I can see that my example application is being built, and in a second we should have access to it. Also, as you interact with the wheel, pay attention to these outputs, because you will see some really useful commands available. For example, how to start the node if you stopped it, and things like that. Okay, so the application is being built. I can see that. And very soon we should have that. Yeah, so we do have our application ready for us, and you can see that application demo is available at this specific path. And to run the application, we have to navigate to the application directory and run npm run next dev. This is exactly what I will do. I will copy this and I will open a new terminal. Just try to make it a little bit bigger so that it's easier to see. So I will navigate to directory where my example app files are stored, and then to start the application I will simply run npm run next dev. So this will start my application in a simple local server, and now I can simply copy this URL and interact with the application. So I'll copy this, open my browser, and open this in a browser. Oh, right. Well, I was testing this earlier. And And so the first thing that you can see is that we can authenticate our application. So you have a few options you can use, for example, KeyDid or Ethereum did PKH, which will use your Ethereum wallet like MetaMask. I will use KeyDid for this quick demo. And the first thing that you can do is you can create your profile. So if you head to profile section, you can create your profile. So I'll quickly do that. Description, gender female, and emoji, simple smiley. I will click update profile, and this should very quickly update my profile here. Okay, so now I head to home and I can create my first post. So I'll say hello everyone. Created the post, and if I head to explore page, I should see my post here. If you actually allow other users to use your application and they interact with this application, you will see their posts here as well, and you will be able to even follow these people. Right now it's just me because I am the only user of this app, if more users use your app, you will see them here as well. You can actually simulate this behavior by simply logging out and choosing different authentication method, for example, Ethereum did PKH, for time reasons, I will simply skip that step and you can play around with this a little bit more later. So the best thing about this application is that you can actually see everything that is under the hood, like all of the files, how they're implemented, and you can use that to better familiarize how to build applications using Composable and Ceramic, or use it for your own application. So very quickly I will show you some of these files. So I will leave everything running, so I still have my Ceramic node running, I have my application here. I will just quickly copy the path to my example application and open a new terminal. So I will navigate here to my example app directory, and I will open everything in VS Code just to make it easier to see where things are. So this example application consists of quite a few files. I will not go into all of them, and very quickly we'll show you the most important one, which is composites. In this directory you have 4 files, and they are all GraphQL files. And these GraphQL files contain the implementation of data models that are used for that example application. So for example, if I click on basic profile.graphql file, you will see that we have this basic profile data model defined in a GraphQL schema definition language, and you will probably recognize these fields like name, username, description, gender, emoji, because this is exactly the fields that we provided when I was creating the user profile on my app. We also have implementation for post data model. This is very interesting example because this also has a relation to another data model. So you can use Composable and Ceramic to not only create these basic data models, but you can also define relations between data models. And that enables you to then write more advanced queries and to build applications that have better and more Web 2-like user experience. So here we have a relation between post model and basic profile model, as you can see. So this then allows us to show the following. In the Explore section, we can actually see the user post and their details, like the user's name and the user's username and so on. So this opens up a lot of really interesting new opportunities for how you can interact with the data. So again, there is way more. You can explore pages directory as well, which has the implementation of all of the pages that you see in the app, and you can see how the data is displayed, how it's pulled up, and so on. So you can really use that as an example for your own app. So the last thing that I wanted to very quickly show you is how you can interact with the data that is stored on your application. So for this, I will have to run a few commands to get set up, but this is very, very quick, so I should be able to do that very fast. So one thing that I will have to do is I will have to generate a runtime representation of the composite that I have. So I'm already in my project directory here, so I will quickly run this command. So we are basically taking an encoded representation of our data models and creating a runtime representation that will allow us to run another very specific and simple server that will allow us to very quickly and locally interact with the data that is stored on our application right now. So I'm starting a very simple GraphQL server, which I will show you right now. Just copy this URL. And this will allow me to interact with the data that is currently stored for my application. This GraphQL server comes with a very simple UI, and you can run your GraphQL queries here. You can provide variables and headers, and you see the results of your queries when you run the queries. So I will run a very simple query that I have here, and this is just simply pulls existing user profiles right now. So I will run this query here, and you can see that it pulled up my user profile that I just created with the name Justina and the description and so on. So you can obviously write more advanced queries, and I would really like to encourage all developers to play around with this a little bit more. You can run queries that would involve relations to other models and so on. I have quite a few examples of these in my slides, so once you get the slides, you can actually try to replicate these. There is an example of how you can perform mutations as well, so update existing records and so on. But I think I'm running out of time, so I will quickly wrap things up. And the very last thing that I wanted to quickly mention are some resources that I think you find really useful to build your applications. So obviously we have a lot of guides you can follow on our documentation. Check out ComposeDB documentation. You can also find Ceramic Network documentation if you want to learn more about the network specifics, like for example Ceramic Anchor Service and so on. Then we have lots of interesting resources on our blog and YouTube channel, so check those out. And lastly, I wanted to mention 2 community projects that I think you might find really useful. One of them is highernodes.io, which is a community project built by one of the Ceramic developers that provides hosted Ceramic nodes to developers. So if you don't want to manage and run your own node, you can use highernodes.io to basically get a Ceramic node that will be managed for you and set up for you, and it's very easy and simple. And then another one is scan-s3.xyz, which is a data explorer built on Ceramic. And this is a really cool tool that allows you to see what data models are currently available on Ceramic Network. You can see them here by the name. You can see some user stats and so on. You can also see the streams themselves and so on. You can even create data models yourself using a very simple UI that is available here. So definitely check this out. It's a really, really cool project, and maybe it will inspire you to build some really cool tools like this as well. So I think that's a wrap on my end. I really hope that this was useful. Again, this was a very quick rundown of ComposeDB and Ceramic Network in general. So obviously, if you have any questions, let me know. And thank you so much for listening.